What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Sit Down Saturday. I've been looking forward to doing this for a while. My original goal was to have all of this lined up to bring us right into Bumblebee. Unfortunately, time and other events came up and didn't really allow that. So we're doing it like this. What I want to do is this Bayverse Breakdown. I want to cover all 6 movies. We'll do one a month, and we're going to really dig in, and we're going to really pay attention to the timeline. I think by the time it ends, it'll be an interesting take on it all when you can really compile and build. So what we're doing here is just foundation work, and we're going to build on top of it. We're going to start with the 07 movie, and we're going to recap what that movie is actually about. There's a war on Cybertron, a cube is lost, which is the Allspark, and the Decepticons are looking for it. It opens with Blackout destroying a military base, trying to obtain files and information, more than likely in relation to Megatron. A small group of soldiers escapes the attack, and the Department of Defense at home is trying to understand and decode their language. Scorponok tracks the small band of soldiers and attacks them. This attack only really serves the purpose to establish that the United States government, the Department of Defense, is now officially aware of these alien creatures running amok on the planet. Meanwhile, Decepticon Frenzy is on Air Force One, who's kind of like a less articulate cookie monster. He's trying to gain information as well. Bumblebee calls the Autobots, and interestingly enough, it's almost a full hour, if not a little bit more than an hour, before we actually see Bumblebee, like kind of the main hero of this movie, up close and fully revealed. I don't feel like you could do that sort of thing today. I feel like that reveal has to come a lot sooner today. It's just interesting. We then meet the rest of the Autobots. Also, side note, Ratchet is aware that his voice is damaged and has been working on a fix. Has been. We get introduced into Sector 7 and basically find that they're greater than the Department of Defense. That's 1.5 hours in. B is captured. Optimus gets the glasses. These glasses are another plot device, which is basically supposed to be used to track the location of the Allspark. It doesn't end up actually mattering, but we'll get back to that. We learn that all modern tech comes from studying Megatron, who is captured and held under the Hoover Dam. Frenzy goes in, frees Megatron. B is captured in the Hoover Dam, gets freed by Sam, gets out, gets the Allspark. Decepticons chase Autobots. It's an Allspark mania. Spike puts the cube in Megatron's chest and kills him. Decepticons are tossed into the sea. B's voice is fixed. We're not sure how. Optimus retrieves a piece of the Allspark. Sector 7 is terminated. They say they are going to leave no evidence of the whole situation. I got news for you. They leave plenty of evidence of the situation. And it closes with Optimus saying their role is to protect the humans, and they call back all the Autobot refugees that are out from Cybertron. Let me say this. I think this one might be the best one. I don't think it's a great Transformers movie, but I think it's kind of a fine movie about alien robots from another planet. It's one of those deals. But let's dig in. Should I go with the compliment sandwich? Sure. Let me tell you what is good about this. The visual effects surprisingly still hold up pretty well. From 2007 to now, I was like, ooh, how is this gonna look? But they really do, for the most part, hold up. Every now and then there's something a little weird, especially when they interact with the humans. But for the most part, pretty well done. The cinematography is good. It's well shot. It's well lit. There's a good color palette with oranges and greens and blues. The soundtrack is amazing. The stunt drivers are incredible. There's A-10 fighter jets in this movie, and I'm just a sucker for the A-10. I just think it looks amazing. It looks like death becomes you. And Bernie Mac is forever charming. God bless the dead. Now we gotta dig into some of the problems in this universe. One thing that's important in sci-fi is to establish the rules of the universe. If you look at like vampire movies, they usually do a pretty good job of this almost in the first act. They tell you how they die, what their weaknesses are, what their strengths are, and how they got there. Usually that's all established in the first act. This movie is inconsistent in that regard. Frenzy's head is kicked off his body. He manages to stay alive. Jazz is ripped in half. He does not. Now that's like a minor nitpick thing, but it doesn't set up a solid foundation of how to look at this movie and to understand the stakes and know the risks and consequences of those risks. So a lot of the times when the robots are in battle, you don't really have this sense of fear of them dying or having any lasting consequence. One, because you don't really get to know any of them, and two, because you don't really know what it is that kills them. But there's a bigger problem in the inconsistent thing with this, and that is time-taking plot elements that have no real purpose. The most major one are the glasses. Sam's great-grandfather has has these glasses that have this crack in them that gives the coordinates to the location of the Allspark. Optimus eventually gets them, which leads him to the Hoover Dam, but he doesn't get the Allspark. B gets it, who's already in the Hoover Dam, and they could have just tracked B being taken to the Hoover Dam. So there's no real reason why the glasses have to exist in the movie at all, and they just end up taking a whole lot of time. That also leads to the whole thing of why didn't the Decepticons just buy it off of eBay, right? Like that's like the meme of Transformer movie, but that is a problem. It's wasted time, and this movie is long. Speaking of wasted time, you don't need the whole hacker bit. The whole group of kids that are hackers, it's unnecessary. You don't need it. They're supposed to be comic relief, but Sam does a good enough job with the comedy where you don't need any extra comedy added to it. There could have been people within the Department of Defense that actually could have done that job and just done it quickly. And speaking of the cube, they don't really do a good job of establishing where the cube was and how they found the cube. They explain how they got to Megatron and all that, but we don't really know too much about the cube in regards to its interaction with Earth. This movie kind of centers around this thing, and it doesn't really explain the background to it. It explains Megatron, but it's almost less necessary. It's nice to get that information, but it's less necessary to the plot. And I had some other little nitpicky problems too, like when you find out that old Strange Thumb's father was a criminal, he acts like it's like this huge betrayal, but it's just sort of pointless drama because she doesn't owe him. She barely knows him. She's on her own course of life. She doesn't owe him any kind of explanation. That's just stuff like that annoys me. The Allspark mania where like, you get a Transformer, you get a like that gets on my nerves. The Bumblebee barricade fight. A lot of people say that the robots' designs are messy, and they are, and that like the fight sequences are messy, and a lot of them are as well. But the worst one is the Bumblebee barricade fight. Like that is the most kind of pile of pieces moving around that's in this movie. It's funny because it's kind of like a metaphor for the problem that's with this movie in general, which is too many moving pieces. You got Sector 7, Department of Defense, Decepticons, Autobots, hackers, military, Witwicky. They tie their parents in something. Like, it's just, there's too much there, and it doesn't need all those things. You could boil this movie down to one government agency, the Witwicky story, and the Transformers, and be good. That's all you need. But I do have some questions about this movie, and I'd like for you guys to answer them if you know the answer, and I'll read them in the comments. How did Barricade get to the Air Force One landing? Like, with all of the procedures and defense policies in place, like how did a Decepticon police car that's not marked appropriately just pull up into the landing area of Air Force One? It's just stuff like that bothers me. Prime is aware of both the glasses and Megatron on this planet. How would he know that? Especially about the glasses. I guess from the eBay listing, but you don't get the impression that he was scouring for information like that. I don't know. That's a very strange little plot bit. When they're leaving the Hoover Dam, they're taking the Allspark to a city, and I don't understand why, especially when we established earlier that Prime won't interfere to free Bumblebee because there's no way to do that without hurting or putting the humans in jeopardy. But later on in the movie, he takes them straight to the city where it's densely populated and has to drive through like miles of desert to get there. It just seems like the best place would have been to fight the Decepticons in the desert and then do whatever you had to do with the Allspark after that. I also have a question regarding Prime and Megatron because he says, like, he calls him brother, but is that intended to be like brother, or is it like my brother in arms? I feel like they should have taken a minute and explained what he meant by that. It seemed forced and confusing. It seemed like it was supposed to be like a, no, I am your father type of bit, but it doesn't come across that way at all. It feels flat. My last question is, why does Megan Fox look sweaty all the time? It's like she always just played full court basketball. Like, I don't get it. It's like she could be anywhere, government facility, which is obviously going to be air conditioned, looks sweaty. It's just obnoxious. I mean, she's an attractive woman, don't get me wrong, like beautiful, but why does she have to be sweaty all the time? She should see someone about that. It's not healthy to just get from the car and walk into a building and be sweating. Like, there might be bigger problems here that you're not taking seriously, Megan Fox. Why is it that the humans kill most of the Decepticons in this movie? It's like the Autobots are like trash little soldiers. Like, Blackout is killed by the humans. Megatron is killed by the humans. Megatron actually kicks Optimus' ass, and then the humans kill Megatron. Another thing that I realized, in my mind, I was like, man, they started going overboard with the potty humor, by the end of this series. But like, it's always kind of been there, which I didn't necessarily realize. I'll run them off for you. There's a fart joke early on. The biatch rear view mirror mirror thing. Sam loses his pants in a fight with Barricade somehow. The dog pisses on Ironhide. The mother says, "Get your hands off my bush," at some point. B pisses on the Sector 7 guy. But the one that bothers me the most, see, when I talked about the B movie and I was saying how like it's a children's movie and people thought that I was saying that therefore it is bad, which I wasn't saying, I think these movies should appeal to children. But what bothers me about the potty humor stuff is like there's like this whole joke conversation bit about masturbation. And like that's not something I want to have to explain to my kid. I think you can make stuff serious and not make it inappropriate for children. That's the balance I'm always trying to get to, and I hate like this. It pisses me off because like it's like this is a children's property. They're so scared to push it beyond a children's property in so many regards. But you have a whole sequence joking about masturbation that I'm sure a room full of parents across the country had to explain to their kids. But whatever. Now let's complete this part of this compliment sandwich. Let me tell you about the things that do feel right about this movie to me. The transformation sound when Blackout first transforms. Jazz has magnet hands and sucks up like all the weapons and stuff, but it's very reminiscent of the grappling hook. It's like a nod and a wink to it, and I dig that. There's that whole bit where Prime talks about not hurting humans. It shows him to be compassionate, sympathetic, and a rational leader. It really feels right for that character. The one line that says, "You failed me yet again, Starscream," feels right. When Jazz grabs the barrel of that tank that was supposed to be Brawl but was Devastator, that feels right. It feels very reminiscent of Cup and Hot Rod taking on Blitzwing in the movie, the 86 movie. The Autobots driving down the road lined up feels right. And honestly, it feels right in all of them. Starscream turning into a robot, shooting down jets, and then turning back into a jet, shooting down jets, and then back into a robot. That all looks really good and feels cool. Like, that feels like Starscream to me. Even though the design is way off, he moves in a way from flipping back and forth and attacking that I always would imagine him kind of moving like. Before we get into the timeline, the problem with this movie is that it's not about the Transformers. They're in there, and you get a little bit of them, but it's not really about them. It's about Sam Witwicky. It's about Bumblebee a good bit, because it's kind of the boy in his car. It's another E.T. movie, really, just like this other Bumblebee movie. But it's like this coming-of-age story, right? But it's called Transformers, and that's the problem for me, is that it's not a bad movie, it's just a bad Transformers movie. I think this is actually a pretty good film. I think it's messy, I think it's convoluted, I don't think you need as much as they put in it. I think you could have shrunk this thing down to about an hour. But what's going to be really interesting to look at as we go through these is the timeline. So let's establish it, and we're going to build upon the same timeline from here for the next 6 months, which I'm really excited about. So the Cube was around before time began, is how they describe it. There was a war on Cybertron, the Cube was lost, and then there was a message sent to the Cybertronians that there was a discovery on Earth. We're not sure from where, we're not sure for what. Doesn't matter. 10,000 BC is the carbon dating of the Cube, which means the Cube landed here in 10,000 BC, because I don't think Cybertron is a carbon-based planet, so that's what that establishes. And then, quote-unquote, a few thousand years ago, Megs crashed on Earth. In 1897, great-grandfather Witwicky finds Megatron in the Arctic Circle. In 1913, the Hoover Dam is built around him. In 1935, the Cube is found. And then in 2003, the Beagle 2 is destroyed by an alien considered to be a transformer and then said to the general public as being lost. And then in 2007, we have the events of this movie, which basically is the large population of Transformers arriving on planet Earth and making themselves known. So I'm gonna rate these movies as well as we go through. It's kind of like a new, fresh look at them, more than 10 years later at this point. I think that this does bad things to the franchise of Transformers, but in and of itself, objectively, standalone, I think this is a 7.5 out of 10. So I'm excited for next month. We'll do Revenge of the Fallen. We'll get some other stuff in there. We got the Takara Hot Rod, Fans Toys Hot Rod conversation happening next Saturday, and we're gonna really go over that with a fine-tooth comb. So yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.